Well, good morning. I'd like to start by sincerely thanking the organizers, especially Millie, and the sponsors of this event, Gulfstream and WWL, and particularly to all you delegates who have, I think, an impossible task. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today. All those little bubbles that you see, they were meant to evoke thoughts of our oceans and solutions, and more abstractly, all of the carbon dioxide that has now become dissolved in our oceans. I'll return to that. And slide. So, what motivates me and my small company to do what we do? We all know there's 1 billion problems in the world that need to be solved, but there are also 7 billion potential problem solvers and an equal number of entrepreneurs. Something, though, has to happen to bring these three things together so they overlap and they make something happen. Well, from my perspective, that something is our sun and its effect on a planet which now has too much carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. It's because we've all failed to live in harmony with our Earth and honor her that the whole climate is now changing. As a scientist, that was all the motivation that I need or would ever need to try to do something about it. So, with that motivation, 15 years ago, I started a solar company. And that was long before it was fashionable or profitable to do such a thing. And what I learned in 10 years of that company boils down to what you see on that slide. In my experience, the variety of small wind turbines that we installed had mechanical or electrical issues that made them unreliable over the long term. You know, it might be a year, 2 years, but eventually something would happen. There's gory details associated with this, but I'm not going to go into that. The point of this slide and the next one is that solar, as good as it is only a partial solution. The unreliability of small-scale wind was just one of these problems that bugged me so much it just was begging to be solved. It had to be solved. So we all know that each one of us must ultimately get all of our energy sustainably. You know, politics aside, I think there's really very little argument about that. And yet, solar panels on rooftops are not going to do it alone. It's not very sunny in the winter, and it's definitely not sunny at night. The only widely applicable solution that I can see is small-scale, reliable, small wind. I should mention, especially to a forum such as this, that tidal and hydro energy are fantastic solutions, but they're not something that a large number of people can adopt personally. So where are all those people? What does the market look like? This is a map of the U.S. wind resource. And as you can see, the Midwest, this belt stretching from North Dakota down to Texas, has a pretty darn good wind resource, but it's relatively sparsely populated. In contrast, 39% of us live in less than 10% of the geographic area of the country, and that's along the coastlines. And the coastlines, as you can see, where most people live, have a terrific wind resource. Those bright colors there all along both coasts. This same paradigm holds essentially worldwide. So let's get on with solving the problem. Let's use physics to do so. This is what our solution looks like. It's a completely ordinary 3-blade, upwind, horizontal axis wind turbine, but with an unusually long tail extending off the image and an unusually large tail vane. Here's a video. This is what it looks like in slow motion from a camera always facing directly into the wind. As wind speeds become too high, the tail furls. It actively pivots so that the wind hits the vane face on. The force of the wind then yaws the entire turbine so that the rotor becomes parallel to the oncoming wind. This decreases the lift on the blades so that the output power remains at a safe level. Then, as wind speeds decrease again to reasonable levels, the tail unfurls, and the force of the wind on the vane yaws the entire turbine so that the rotor faces the wind again and normal operation resumes. So that's what we did to solve the reliability problem. We called this thing active furling. And here's another way of explaining active furling, which would be familiar to anyone who's ever sailed a sailboat. Much like sail position controls points of sail on a sailboat, active furling uses the tail of the turbine to control the angle of the rotor with respect to the wind. If you try to sail too close to the wind, in that no-go zone that you see on the slide, your boat slows down and eventually stalls. Well, we're using exactly the same principle with the Weaver 5 wind turbine. So fine, we have this simple mechanical solution, but what controls it? Active furling is controlled by lots of sensor data. All these things that you see listed. The sensors, the lithium-ion batteries, are a couple of disruptive technologies we've adopted. They were just sort of natural things to include. All these sensors also make it very much part of the Internet of Things because these turbines are connected to the Internet. We're watching them all the time, the entire fleet. This is how our turbine knows, through its sensors, for example, to respond to National Weather Service warnings. Now I get the video. Severe thunderstorms and tornadoes and hurricane warnings, things of that nature, it knows about, and so takes steps to protect itself before the storm front even hits. All right, and like any respectable Internet of Things thing, it has an app showing the owner real-time data, such as wind speed and power, voltage, frequency, current, and so on. And of course, you're watching this anywhere you happen to be in the world and reassuring you that your turbine is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, producing energy or protecting itself if a storm is coming through. So now, wind works, and that makes me happy because we have a reliable turbine that is affordable, it is scalable, and it is a widely distributable solution to climate change. And that was the original objective. Okay, so who are we? Well, there's me. I'm a scientist. I have a couple of degrees, as you can see, which I've used really only sparsely in the last 15 years, except for the problem-solving skills that training left me with. The rest of our team is small, as you can see, but highly talented. Chuck Wright is not only a dear friend, he's a 38-year IBM veteran, a microprocessor designer. He's been responsible for designing all of these sophisticated electronics, basically translating what I said I would like the machine to do into reality. And that reality now looks like a little box, about this size. It's just phenomenal what is happening with electronics and the Internet of Things. We have Jeb Mead, a very talented machinist who is now making in-house all of the parts for our wind turbine with an eye to aesthetics. People have commented they think the turbine actually looks pretty good. That's reflected in the fact that he has a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. We have a young mechanical engineer, a recent Cornell grad, who does all the drudgery, the fine detail work of mechanical engineering, which I am forever grateful for. And then there's Suzanne McManus, again, a person completely dedicated, passionate about the mission and the product that we've produced. Let me share with you some milestones. So as I alluded to, I started this solar company quite a while ago. After several years in business, it became apparent that the small wind turbines that we were installing weren't working. So we developed a new concept, the Active Furling concept, founded Weaver Wind Energy. 3 years ago, I sold the solar company, let the capitalists have it, and started on this new venture, which needed 100% of my time. We were very fortunate through the generosity of New York State and an entity called NYSERDA, the Energy Research and Development Authority, to give us our first grant to get through the development of the Weaver 5. We deployed 5 units. They're still operating. We're monitoring them every moment. The second grant we just received to scale up to a 15,000-watt machine. We've also made a commitment to scale down to a more affordable 2-kilowatt entry-level wind turbine, again, using all the same active furling technology, all the same electronics. We've completed certification now of the 5, a long, arduous, and expensive process. And as I've alluded to also, we're doing our parts manufacturing in-house. Economics. This is where we are today. We have the capacity to make about 12 of these units a year. The revenue from each unit is about $61,000. Of that, we spend $51,000 making it. Marketing, just the few that we've been able to sell, takes the rest. That leaves us with a total annual revenue of about $60,000. Not much. Not sustainable. If we can scale this to 48 units per year, just a 4x scale, we can bring the cost of the units down. Our direct costs also decrease. Hopefully, we don't spend as much marketing each individual machine. With a net revenue of $10K, that would bring us to an annual revenue near $500,000, and that would be sustainable for our company. So very simply, with the award, it would allow me to hire some labor, to scale our production up by that 4x factor, achieving critical mass sustainability, and a good deal of happiness for everyone involved. So thank you very much.
So questions. Art, I have one. I live in Central Texas, where we have some pretty profound wind variations. We don't have a lot of steady wind.
Yes, you
but
do.
we get microbursts sometimes.
Yeah.
How fast can this react to that kind of, I mean, does it keep sort of trying to reset, or does it just shut off?
This was the central question. And, to be completely honest, I didn't think this was going to work. Precisely because of the response time that's needed. That video you saw was in slow motion. The actual response time of that tail is about 4 seconds. And that's what's needed to respond to, as I know you've seen, severe thunderstorm fronts coming through.
Yeah.
The wind speed can go from literally nothing, or a light breeze, to 50 or 60 miles per hour in 4 or 5 seconds, and a machine needs to respond just that fast, and it will.
Cool, that's great. We've got a question over here.
Presentation. Question for you. Which elements are proprietary IP for you? Because it seems like the solution is so simple that tomorrow someone else can come, GE,
That's right.
other big companies, and simply replicate your solution and put you out of business. So what's unique about your solution?
Well, maybe they will come and maybe they will replicate. In the early days, we spent a heck of a lot of money on patent attorneys and so on. And I became, let me just say I became frustrated. I'm now taking the view that Elon Musk takes about his product. Let them replicate it. Let them do it. This is a desperately needed technology that even if it's taken over by another company, maybe they buy us, maybe, who knows, then I think that's fine. We will still have the highest quality product. We'll always be ahead of the curve. We'll always, I hope, be able to maintain a sustainable company selling high quality.
So I'm guessing a lot of your stuff is around trade secret, not IP.
Yeah. It is such a simple solution, and that's what I liked about it. This is what Einstein wanted. Keep things as simple as possible, but no simpler. The Internet of Things, all those sensors that we have, the only reason we can use them is because they're so cheap now, and we can communicate with all of our machines. If you stop by later to the table, I'll show you our app that shows you the data. But yeah. I'm under no illusions that our small company can scale this fast enough in order to respond to the climate crisis that we all face.
Any other questions? Over here.
I don't know. Yeah. Are you looking for a strategic partner to manufacture or distribute?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Are you looking for a strategic partner to
yes.
manufacture or distribute?
It would depend on the scale. Small scale we can handle at this time and in the near term. If there were a strategic partner to approach us and say, yeah, we'd like to scale this in a big way, who am I to turn them down?
If that strategic partner also pursued protection from a patent standpoint, you said you got frustrated. Why? What do you mean frustrated? You couldn't get it proved, or you cost too much money, or what?
It was a combination of both. As you know, it takes the U.S. Patent and Trade Office quite a while to get through patent applications. When they finally did, they came back with a couple of pages of patents dating back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s that basically had this idea written down. They said, we just don't think this is patentable. It's too simple. It's based on old ideas, right? But we don't think it's patentable. This, after having spent nearly $200,000 on patent attorneys, which left a very sour taste in my mouth. And so that's fine. This was right about the time Elon Musk was saying, hey, you guys can have all our patents. We're going to be better anyway because we're ahead of the curve and we'll just stay that way. I think I agree with him.
Are you still practicing at Mayo Clinic?
No, I'm not. That was a long time ago.
I asked that because do you have any particular healthcare applications, medical applications of this device?
Well, insofar as it contributes to stability of our electric grid in any number of settings, certainly, yeah. I mean, this is what we need, right? We all need a stable grid that doesn't go down when centralized generation plants go down for whatever reason. This is why distributed energy in the form of solar, in the form of wind, anything, is such a great idea.
Thank you.
That's great. We have a question over here.
So I'm not an expert in wind turbines, but can you just give me the 1 minute, like what exact problem are you solving? If wind turbines turn into the wind at high velocity, do they break? I'm not quite sure exactly the big picture problem.
Okay, yeah, in one word, it's reliability. And as I said, there are mechanical issues, there are electrical issues, but they are predominantly mechanical that come up with other small wind turbines. An analogy might be to your automobile. We're all accustomed to taking our automobiles in for periodic service. If we don't do that, we all know what happens. Well, here you have a device that lives up 120 feet up on a tower. This is not a convenient service location. You need to design a machine that is essentially impervious to breakdown over a long period of time. We're talking literally billions of revolutions. As such, the mechanical engineering needs to be impeccable. The control needs to be impeccable. That's what we achieved with the active furling. We took control of this machine so that the control is active, not passive. All the other, the great majority of other small wind turbines out there are passive devices that rely on a balance of mechanical forces to move them out of the wind or to break them in some fashion. Break, B-R-A-K-E. Ours is an entirely different concept, and one that I hope allows us to say we have a machine you can put up once, it'll stay up, it'll operate for 10, 15, 20 years without a problem.
One more over here, Jane.
Two questions. One has to do with storage, the other has to do with birds.
Okay, thank you for both of those questions, especially the storage question. As I said, I spent 10 years with the solar industry and doing all kinds of renewable energy installations, not only solar. Batteries were not frequent, but you know, enough of an issue for people that I became extremely frustrated with lead-acid chemistry, which are, you know, most of the batteries still deployed. I will never touch another lead-acid battery again in my life. They're heavy, they're ancient technology. The lithium-ion batteries that we now have in our electric vehicles, that I have in my Nissan Leaf, that many people perhaps here have in their Teslas, the successful delegates, I'm thinking. This has revolutionized everything where storage is concerned. And so our systems are designed to be interfaced with high voltage lithium-ion batteries operating at 300 to 400 volts, very much like electric vehicles. And on the point of birds, a very much discussed issue, a very important issue, because these species share our planet with us. In all my years of dealing with small wind turbines, I have yet to find a small avian creature dead next to a small wind turbine tower. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but it's very rare, and it's important to put it in context. The mortality associated with small birds flying into glass windows, coming into contact with our clawed pets, we all know what I'm talking about, is enormously greater, orders of magnitude greater than the impact of wind turbines, even large ones, on birds. And there's plenty of scientific literature I can point you to help reassure you on that count.
Art, stage right.
I just had one quick question. You alluded to the maintenance schedule on the device, and I'm just wondering, is that, I guess, less than the maintenance schedule on the turbine itself? And, you know, I guess
There's no maintenance schedule.
zero maintenance schedule.
Right. On the other hand, for, you know, these first turbines that we put up, and by this I'm going to say like the first 1,000 machines we put up, I'm going to recommend that someone climb up that tower once a year, open the nacelle, get out their iPhone, take a few pictures, and send them to us. Show me what it looks like inside, just so I can reassure myself and the customer that everything looks good and it can keep on operating. We're monitoring every single one of these at our office 24/7. We know, probably before a customer will know, if there's an incipient problem, and we'll fix it. We can control it by software. If it needs to be furled, we'll furl it remotely, you know, from 1,000 miles away. We have control of these machines.
Yeah, it was more the physical components that I was interested in. The physical components.
The physical components, yes. They all have a design life of 20 plus years. That was one of the main design criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And right here.
So there's a very large installed base of wind turbines. Is this a complete package, or is this a retrofit? And have you thought about retrofitting that fleet of turbines?
Yeah. The tower, in many cases, is of equal expense to the turbine itself. And as far as retrofitting go, yeah, if someone wanted to replace a small wind turbine with one of ours, we could do that, provided that an engineering analysis, and we'll do that, shows that the tower can support the thrust loads and so on that small wind turbines impart. So yes, very much retrofittable.
Jeff?
So a couple of questions. One is, I gather that you do have some turbines already in place of this design. Is that true?
That's true.
How many?
We have 5.
5. And then part of what I'm looking for is echoing some of the other questions, is understanding the actual technical validation and also the market validation. And when you talk about your story about the patents rings true. First of all, I'm from Maine, where we do have a lot of wind. I live on the coast, so I get all of that. But I also have looked at a lot of small form wind generators. And there's a lot of other kinds of solutions, and I'm wondering really what makes your, I mean, I can see that it's different, but what makes it meaningfully different? And part of that answer comes from what market validation you've done.
Yeah, it comes down to the lifetime of these machines. What makes these machines ultimately pay for themselves, giving one a reasonable return on investment, is if they're up and operating close to 100% of the time. If a machine is down, even for a short period of time, this has a dramatic impact on its economic return. So again, the whole thing is about reliability, just being able to put it up in the air with confidence and to have it last for its design life.
Art, that was great.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Weaver Wind, Art Weaver.